Alright guys, so today we are going to see another movie because that's apparently all we do.
Yeah, so we're going to keep making that reference until we do something else.
Yeah, so today is a very big day because it is time for Star Wars Rogue One, the first Star Wars anthology movie.
This is very much a big stepping stone in Lucasfilm, as it is the first live-action movie to not focus on the Skywalker family in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and you know, it's kind of hard to believe that it's been only a year since The Force Awakens came out. Because, thinking about it, it feels like years since The Force Awakens came out. Just so much has changed in the last year. And so much has gone on, so much news has come around about Rogue One and to a lesser extent Episode 8, and it's kind of weird to think that that a lot has happened in the last year. It feels like so long ago.
The year has gone by really... I don't know if it's gone by fast or it's gone by slow. It just seems like it's gone by in a myriad of different ways. But obviously, this year is going to be with this year coming to a close, we can only hope that 2017 will be better.
Yeah, but we shouldn't be talking about the year, we should be talking about the movie. The movie looks... Okay, so the director, Gareth Edwards, has directed 2 movies beforehand. He directed Monster, which is a movie so independent that it was him, a few of his friends, who just happened to be a married couple, playing a couple in the movie, and him doing the VFX himself on the train on his laptop. And the second movie he directed was the 2014 version of Godzilla, American remake of Godzilla, which featured a lot, which despite being called Godzilla, featured Godzilla very sparingly, and rumor has it that's kind of how he's going with Darth Vader this movie.
Yeah. So we know a lot more about this movie going in than we did about Episode 7, and that makes sense because there's kind of a lot of details that can come out about this because we know the plot. Because they can put out the plot information or anything, because with Episode 7 you were just going to see where it went, but with this, you kind of got to put out a little bit more than just plots kept under wraps.
Yeah, the thing about Rogue One is that this has been set up for 39 years, 40 years next year. So Episode 8's got a lot to live up to. But for 39 years, people have had this plot has basically existed. And I don't know if the expanded universe actually touched on it before all these anthology movies and episodes 7 through 9 essentially made them completely non-canonical. But now we get to see a new version of it that essentially is for the general audience, for the people who don't go to read the expanded universe novels and comics and board games and all that other stuff.
Yeah, it's all come together. We're gonna see how this goes. This is very much this has been very much admitted to be an experiment by Lucasfilm, and we're just gonna have to see how this goes, how it happens.
Because in the end, if this movie, let's face it, this movie's gonna do incredibly well. There's no way it's gonna fail. This movie was pretty much made by Disney to print money. The only way it could have failed is if critics hated it and thus audiences hated it, and which would then lead to the sales to go down on other anthology movies, thus making it so that after Han Solo, we're never going to see another anthology movie. But the fact is, this movie is already a success. It's spawned quite a bit of interest online, so much so that for the exact day that the tickets went on sale, Fandango was trying hard not to crash. It's well received critically, not Force Awakens well received, but still well received. And in the end, we've got some really good talent behind it with Felicity Jones, Diego Luna. We honestly have never seen anything with Diego Luna or actually Gareth Edwards directing, but I think it should be all right. Right, Felicity Jones was really great in Theory of Everything,
and we got one of our favorite actors in the sci-fi genre, Alan Tudyk, who is playing a droid and he looks like he's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, so I think we rambled enough. One of the main reasons for this was because I kind of wanted to make this a really long, an extra special, kind of longer video. So let's move on. So let's go ahead and we'll see you guys after the jump. Alright guys, it's over. The reason we're a little out of breath is because it's cold out and the car was parked really far away. This is probably the most full theater we've had to be in a long time.
Yeah.
And the main reason being that we picked the earlier showing. But what can be said about this movie?
It was really good.
Yeah, it was really good. And
it's just, I'm hard pressed to find a ranking for it at the moment.
Yeah.
In the Star Wars movies.
The thing is, it's definitely a good movie, but it doesn't feel like a Star Wars movie.
Kinda.
In a way, this is kind of the least Star Wars movie we may ever get, because almost none of the characters in the movie are actually in the Star Wars universe. None of the, have been in before this. There's not a single Jedi shows up throughout the entirety of the movie. They're mentioned, but that's about it. And
it's very much its own self-contained story, and that's kind of part of the good part of it, because we haven't seen these characters before, meaning that these characters could very well die. Anyone could go, and no one would be spared.
And these characters, and the fact is, we don't know the outcome. The fact is, the beginning of this movie is essentially, we know the what, we know the plot to the movie, we know the ending of the movie from the beginning. But until you actually see the movie, you do not know the how. You don't know exactly how they get the Death Star plans to it. This is, and as far as the Star Wars prequels go, this definitely beats out any previous record holder. No matter what you think, no matter who you are, prequel apologist or just plain person who hates the prequels, this is definitely the best of the Star Wars prequels, even though it's not an official part of the Star Wars prequel trilogy.
So I guess we should just get down to the bare bones of it and talk about the actual movie.
Yeah. Starting with Felicity Jones, of course, because she is pretty much the most fleshed out character of them. Jyn Erso, and she performed well. It's a Star Wars movie, and basically the performance, and once again, like Force Awakens, all this character, it's basically a slew of classic Star Wars style performances, and Felicity Jones really knocks it out of the park. She's performing these scenes of both action hero and kind of emotional. I can't think of the word. Emotional depth. There we go. Why did I forget that word? Anyway, but yeah, that's basically it. She kind of brings the emotional depth when she needs it, and kind of keeps it action hero stoic when she needs it.
Diego Luna was pretty damn good in this movie.
Honestly, I think Diego Luna might be the character I might have latched onto the most, even if I can barely remember his name at points.
Yeah, he had a great character. We didn't get much of, and probably my biggest complaint about this entire movie is that we didn't get much of a lot of any of the character development with any of the character, to get to know any of the characters.
Yeah, the thing
even near the end, I was like, we don't know much about Jyn. We didn't get to spend a lot of time with Jyn, did we?
Yeah, the thing about this movie is, this is something I noticed right away. The movie kind of moves at a breakneck speed. It's basically dead, plot point, all that kind of stuff. And it's not a bad, once again, this is not a bad movie at all. This is not. And this is not going to be like Transformers 4, where we say it was okay for what it was, and then later on when we keep thinking about it, we're like, that movie really sucked, because this movie is good. It's a really great action movie. It's a war movie. It's the first Star Wars war movie.
we get to see the bitterness of war. Like we never got to see. Like in Star Wars, the rebellion was always painted as this perfect, unyielding, undestructive, guilty, non-guilty party in this whole thing. And then
essentially in a universe that has, since the very first movie that we ever got to see of it, where the battle line was clearly drawn as black and white, as literally light and dark, black and white, we have clearly now gotten into the thing that's been missing the most, gray.
Because we get to see the rebellion show its darker side, and we get and that makes sense. War is hard. Anybody who knows, who's studied history, knows that everybody's made that no matter what side of the war you're on in a war, there will always be decisions that will not be that history will never paint as good decision, as the right decision, or a good decision, or a morally right decision.
And in the end, this movie kind of paints that. Kudos to the writer of American Pie and the director of Twilight Breaking Dawn to throw that kind of thing together in a script.
Yeah. So.
And Donnie Yen, badass.
Badass. He showed up, he came, he saw, he conquered, he gave us a character who was funny and just an all-out badass.
He pretty much stole every scene he was in.
Yeah.
And Alan Tudyk as K2SO, he was pretty damn awesome.
He was like the comedy center of the entire movie. He was the comic center of the entire movie, and almost every line, everybody in the theater was laughing.
Yeah, yeah, and the CGI blends well on also though.
We get a lot of. And I was noticing we got a lot of models. We got some CG, and obviously one thing that we should bring up is the fact that there are some CGI. There are some characters who they brought back from New Hope that unfortunately could not be in them. Have the actors reprise their roles for various reasons.
So they were kind of brought in as motion capture characters, and sometimes it worked. Sometimes it really looked convincing, but other times it kind of looked like Tom Hanks in Polar Express or Jeff Bridges in Tron Legacy.
There was a little bit of uncanny valley going on with some of the action, with some of the performances, with some of the CG characters, minus K2SO, because he's obviously a droid.
Yeah, but the thing is, this movie kind of needed the CG. Compared to Force Awakens, it's needed the CG more, because Force Awakens is a full episode of Star Wars. It has the access to the practical effects, the film cameras, all that kind of stuff, because it's got a slightly bigger budget. Rogue One is an anthology movie, so obviously they can't make every single alien we see a practical effect character, but they make up for it by having some incredibly well-blended CGI. Minus the scenes we brought up earlier, where occasionally a motion capture character will kind of turn into Tom Hanks' Polar Express or whatever.
There was a bunch of nods to the original, to A New Hope. A couple of my favorites. One that I don't think a lot of people got, that we can't talk about because it's a spoiler, but
there were a lot of great visual cues, like when they're taking off and coming down, like when they're taking down and off and landing from the rebel base. You can actually see the guy.
The lookout. The watchtower.
You can actually see the watchtower and the lookout from A New Hope actually registering them. And hats off to Michael Giacchino for once again standing in for John Williams incredibly by inevitably. He's kind of gotten Giacchino's kind of gotten into a habit of kind of mimicking John Williams' epicness of score, and it suits him because he managed to make because I almost forgot that I wasn't listening to an actual John Williams score. I was listening to. And I don't hate Michael Giacchino. We've praised him so many times in these videos, and he's awesome. Awesome.
He actually And for a lot of the score, it seemed very much like we were gonna go into Star Wars music, and then suddenly it went a completely different way.
Because once again he incorporated a lot of original Star Wars music, and and of course there were a few changes to make the music his own along the way. But it had the epic score, strings and horns and all that kind of stuff. It sounds epic. It's a Star Wars score.
Okay, one last thing we should probably talk about before we go, because we're coming up to the end. Vader.
Darth Vader is in. Well, Darth Vader's in like 2 scenes of this movie. That's about it. But he does not fail at being intimidating in this movie.
He is a very dark and sinister and intimidating character. Anakin Skywalker is dead and gone by this point in Vader's history, and we get to see firsthand the person that he was after all of this.
And it's really great. And honestly, I noticed a few subtle design changes in Vader's outfits.
Yeah.
Which is just interesting. And it was so great to see hear James Earl Jones back in the role, even though he never really left. He's been basically the only person who has ever played Vader all the way through.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's pretty damn awesome. But really, Rogue One, go see it. You weren't going to see it. Honestly, come on, guys.
Yeah, don't be one of those alt-right people who think there's an anti-Trump message. There's not, by the way. Hey, don't listen to that bullshit.
Yeah. So anyway, guys, we're home right now. So I guess we're done with the video today.
Yeah.
So, like, favorite, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. In the comments below, what did you think of Rogue One? If you've seen it, you're probably going to see it anyway. Hey, but no spoilers in the comments.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're a Sith.
Yes. So we'll probably be back. I don't know when we'll be back.
Maybe at the end of, maybe at the beginning of the year. Maybe not. We don't know. We're probably going to see a few more movies, but I don't know if they're going to be worth doing videos on.
Yeah. So we'll be back when we're back. But until then, guys, we will see you guys next time. May the Force be with you.
Bye.